The European Parliament recently announced that the United Kingdom, that's us, could continue to use metric and imperial measures side by side indefinitely. So basically we can use whatever measurements we want. It's up to us. Excellent.
Great.
Derek Pollard, Secretary of the UK Metric Association, and Imperial Measurement fan Warwick Cairns, author of About the Size of It, are here to tell us more. Good morning, gents.
Good morning to you.
Do you know each other?
We do, yeah.
Right, okay. Is it going to be a case of ding ding round one?
It'll be good-natured.
Okay, let's give Derek a chance then. Derek, is this a backward step?
No, not at all.
Oh, good.
Europe has really complicated this issue over the last 10 years, and I'm really glad to see the back of them. They should never have been in the argument in the first place.
So, if without them, though, would we have had a sort of a push towards metric?
I think without them, the job would probably be finished. If you look around the world, many countries that didn't have Europe complicating the issue got the job done much more swiftly and conveniently than Britain has managed.
Where else still uses imperial measurement?
Nobody, apart
America,
from
the biggest economy in the world. Apart from that, nobody.
The biggest economy in the world uses English measurements, which were the measurements we used before 1824. There are so many differences between American and imperial measurements that you have to be very careful.
Is that so?
When, for example,
a
you
couple of
refer
slight
to a
ones
pint.
Right. What are the slight differences, Warwick?
Yeah, well, basically, it's their pint is slightly smaller than ours. Theirs is 16 ounces, ours is 20. But they're inches. They're the same inches, the same feet, the same miles, the same pounds and ounces. So there are some differences. And
if you ask an American his weight, he'll say 150 pounds. You ask me my weight, I say 10 stone, 10 pounds. So there are differences there.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, that's maybe just a sort of slight cultural thing, though, is it not?
It's familiarity, but that's the reason why we're only using stones and pounds in the first place. It's because our mum and dads used it, and we've continued to use it. But if we stood back, both the Americans or us stood back and took a good look at it, we'd decide that this made no sense at all, and we ought to move over to the system used by 200 other countries around the world.
My scales, you can change them from stones, pounds, to just pounds to kilograms.
But I guess you use stones and pounds.
Of course I do.
That's right, because your mum and dad use stones and pounds. But if you gave it a few moments' thought, you would possibly come round to the fact that this didn't make a lot of sense. When you go into hospital, and an American, when he goes into hospital as well, you're weighed in kilos, and it goes in your notes as kilos. Because when it comes round to prescribing your medicine or working out your radiation dose, it's all based on kilos.
But do you know
that's
what,
the
though?
world standard.
It's about world standards and being sensible and everything. And there's a lot of things that are sensible and logical to do. But if all we did in this life was things which are straightforward, logical and sensible, there would be a dull and boring place.
People wouldn't be listening to this show, for one thing.
No, but for example, right, it would make a lot of sense if we all spoke one language throughout the world. So, but no one's going to want all their languages abolished. I mean, if we went into the west coast of Scotland and said you cannot speak Gaelic anymore, people would not be happy. But you say, oh yes, but English is the language of the United Kingdom, so why don't you speak that? I mean, it's the same argument with measures, really. People
Never mind the Western Isles. You should try that line in here.
I know, and especially with my accent as well. But life is too short to spend all your time being the same as everyone else and being grey and conformist.
Can I ask you, gents, which other countries then have either stuck with imperial measurement or have switched over and found it to be a success to go metric?
Well, do you know, one thing I would say is that a lot of countries officially, because it pleases politicians and it pleases bureaucrats to switch their country over, but generally a lot of normal people aren't very happy about it. So what you find is a number of countries, the government will say, right, we're going to switch over and we're going to be all modern and metric. And when you actually look at what people are doing, it isn't the case. That happened in Canada, a while back. Everything was going to be metric, and then they found that people were still selling things in pounds and ounces in the shops. It happened in Japan, right, in 1924. Japan, they've got their own traditional system, which I won't go into here, and the government said, right, we're going to go into the 20th century, we're going to go metric. in 1966 they had to do it all over again because no one had actually done it. 2 years ago, in the Japanese national census, they've allowed people again to give the area of their house in traditional units. Because people, despite the fact they, in theory, went metric in 1924, people still think in Japanese traditional measures.
The last 50 years has seen the most number of countries switch from imperial or other measurements to metric. Something like 50 countries have switched in the last 50 years, including Australia. Now, Canada's a special case because they have a very long border with the United States, but Canada has managed to change its road signs over, which has defeated Britain for the last 40 years. Australia, which I visited a couple of years ago, I would say is probably the most metric country in the world now. They've taken to it like ducks to water, so with a bit of a government encouragement, people will go for the simpler system, even if they're familiar with the older measurements, because that's what their mum and dad have used.
See, I think we've never really been committed to enough to do it in the UK. No. I think what we want to do is think again, set a date, and not just change it to metric, but kilometres per hour. Just change over to driving in the right-hand lane.
Well, I think the confusing thing as well, when children at school and they're learning about centimetres and metres, and then they go to the shops and they're seeing things in pounds and ounces, and so it's just confusing to have two systems, surely.
It's similar with languages. Again, if I take the example of Gaelic, you may have lessons at school in Gaelic. You may go to the shop and speak in English, and no one's saying you should abolish this language. People have minds that are capable of using both, and I myself use both. So if I quite like cameras, I'd never go into a shop and ask for a 2-inch lens. I'd go and ask for a 50mm lens.
Yes.
In the same way, if you talk to any of these children who've been taught in centimetres and metres, as I was at school actually, and say, how tall are you? Chances are they give you their height in feet and inches. We pick and choose what we like.
You're right. I mean,
but
I know how
cast your
tall
mind back to decimal currency changeover.
Yes.
16th of February 1971, decimal currency arrived in the shops. Within a year, a cut-off date had been. People weren't saying then, oh, we should be allowed to use 2 indefinitely. This can go on forever. Within 12 months. The old currency was dying out, and within 6 months after that, there was a cut-off date, and it all finished.
It'll be the same when the euro comes in, fellas.
And I'm glad to hear that you said the same is possibly the way out on this metric muddle with trying to use two systems which people really don't understand either and muddle through with both.
Derek, Warwick, many thanks both of you for joining us, and we shall continue to use whatever